has been shared. First of all, let me introduce myself a little bit. I'm not quite sure how many of you participated in the previous seminar. We have a whole series of seminar, include introduction of the AI to kids, introduction of Python, and this is the third one. It's introduction of the Java. My name is David Peng, and I am the director at Youth Innovation Lab and also host a Youth Coding and Innovation Club. I'm glad to have chance to be invited here to present this seminar to you. And this is really something I have interesting to show you guys. And I also know there are some struggle by different group of students. And some of these students are really young. So I tell the parents do not worry too much about if they cannot really understand what is really the advanced programming. But for some other parents, uh, their kids is at the high school age, like 10th grade or 11th grade, and they want to learn um, like the AP computer science course, and they ask me the similar question. Um, how can we, I mean, from the kid standpoint, from student standpoint, how can we start to learn advanced language without any previous knowledge? Uh, for example, I never really learned the programming before. Can I learn Java? If I learned a little bit about Scratch, can I learn Java? Or if I know something about Python, can I learn Java? So I try to answer all of this question by myself. And this presentation is mostly focused not about the technical side. Say, okay, I teach you how to programming. Of course, I will go through a lot of this fundamental, but mostly I try to answer this question. The question number one is that, uh, can I learn Java if I don't really have any previous knowledge about any programming? Uh, the second question is that, can I learn Java if I know a little bit about Scratch? The third question is that, can I learn Java if I know a little bit about Python? So either you have absolutely no idea about Java at all, or you know a little bit about Python or other programming language, but just try to learn Java. I hope this presentation will give you some basic idea and will give the parents peace of mind. Say, oh, I think my kids can learn. It's not really super challenge as long as they can start and they can spend a little bit time to understand and practice. Uh, Nothing really wrong. You can learn. Okay, so let's start. Um, like what I mentioned before, most times when you pick up the language, I mean programming language, of course, to learn, you always have the first question. One of the first questions that whether this is the right language to learn, because we are literally have probably more than 40, 50 different programming language you can learn. And some of these are really interesting and other is really challenge. But how can we pick the right one to learn? It's probably the same question as what the student will choose when they go to school, right? Go to high school. Why the high school teach the AP computer science using Java? Why they do not really pick the Python to teach you? And so one of the reasons why the Java language is so important, especially uh, compared to other language, is that it's really highly in demand. Uh, I would tell you why it was highly in demand. Based on the statistic at 20, this is 2019's chart, but this year's chart is very similar. So I don't refine this year's chart, but you can see Java is pretty much the most in-demand programming language, and Python is number two. Of course, somebody probably know JavaScript, but C, C++ is also very popular. They are really follow behind the Python JavaScript. So You can see a lot of this language, you probably never heard it before. Rugby, what's a rugby, right? That's not really the sports. It's not really playing at Olympic. Of course, that's a programming language. You probably know what's Andrew, but Perl, you probably never heard it before. PHP, you probably know it just because you heard that WordPress and a couple of very popular web framework was based on PHP. Okay, but in general, Java is one of the most in-demand programming language. So how can I do with Java? Of course, Java is so popular, it's not really comes without any reason. Um, if you check Java's history, I'm not really here to go through all of this history, but I really like to touch base a little bit so you can understand why some programming language like C or C++, they are really invented 40 years ago, more than 40 years ago. Why they are not really gaining more popularity now? C++ was really, C was invented probably back to 1960. C++ is 1980s. But Java was invented at 1994, I believe. So why it gets so popular? Uh, how can you do with Java? Of course, you can build all kind of GUI application. What GUI means is graphic user-based interface. So any of this application, if you see they have a graphic user interface, that's GUI. Uh, from the web to the very basic one, all kind of, it's called the GUI application. And of course, you can use Java to build the website. Something very popular website was based on Java. They have a lot of Java technology was really invented to support the web framework. And you can do scraping data from the website. Um, I don't really give you too much idea about what the scraping means, but I just give you one typical example. So, for example, I can tell you on COVID-19 statistic map. Okay, one of the most popular map, I believe, is this one by John Hopkins. You probably see this map before. If you don't really see it, I show it. It's really amazing. It shows the statistic from all around the world. So how this was made is because they are from John Hopkins University, but they are not really the government body. They cannot really force anybody to tell them the data. So, for example, they cannot really call the Egypt government and say, okay, you must feed me the data to this application. Nobody will give them any authority to do that, let alone some of this country have very highly restricted rule, right? So how can they get all of this data from different country? They are really scraping the data from different websites. For example, they know they have the South Africa has one website from government that posts the data. So they try to come over to scraping the data from that website. Okay, I should remove this one. I'm sorry. And also, this is a very good example is that after they scrape the data, they should analyze the data. For example, they got the data and then they need to do some statistic, and they also need to give you some basic analysis. Say, oh, this probably is a hotspot at St. Paul at Brazil, right? Because they have the trend. In the last 2 weeks, the number of COVID-19 case was skyrocketed, maybe 2 times more than 2 weeks ago, something like this. So that's analysis. This is also can be supported by Java. Of course, they have some other thing like the system admin task. A system admin is something about how to manage the whole system. You do not really write the code to do the graphic update or something like that. Instead, you try to, we call uh, the task. The task individually can monitor the system. They can do some restart, reboot, or stop. So all kind of system administration tasks can be done by Java. Of course, they can also code to uh, for the game. So if you play some of this game, not all of this are really based on Java, of course, but some of this game was based on Java. Okay, so we know Java can do a lot of stuff, and they can develop all kind of application for us. And this is really a short history about the Java. So I just quickly go through that. It can build the mobile phone application. They used to really build the what's so-called the POS system, so point of sale. So when you go to the grocery store, for example, or Walmart, um, you can see they have some sort of machine which, when you check out, you scan the barcode and then they calculate, and then they even can weight it and just make sure you put the item on the right place. So this kind of post system can be really implemented by Java. Of course, video game. Some of these most popular uh, video game, like the Minecraft, was written in Java. And traditionally, we have a lot of trading application. Okay, New York City is the global, like the hub for the trading, right? So we have the stock exchange, but most of this stock exchange, it's not really running manually. Instead, they have a lot of third-party trading application from different company, and they are really doing the automatic trading. So that's something they used to be implemented only by C++ for performance reason, but more and more of this are really written by Java. It's because Java has some advantage. And we also have some application about the big data. So Hadoop and Elasticsearch are both written in Java. So they are very often in the big data project. In case you don't really know what a big data means, big data is really a term referred to huge number of data. So for example, you probably don't really know how can we get the weather forecast. So the weather forecast, it's really by huge amount of data collected by the different sensor and also by the satellite. They use this huge amount of data to do to build the model and then try to predict what's weather. For example, will it be a raining day in next 24 hours, or it will be really hot in next 24 hours. So if you compare the weather forecast to 20 years ago, of course, your age probably too young to that, you can tell the accuracy of today's forecast is much improved over the last 20 years. Okay, so now let's go to a little bit of hardcore. So when we talk about Java, and a lot of times you have to realize how Java works. I can give you the chance to see the Java code. This is a Java code which is not really super easy. They have a lot of code. Um, but in general, the Java, they have its own source code, and it has been developed through the what we call the IDE. And some of this IDE like this is pretty straightforward. It's very small. This Genie, I love it because this is really very portable and not really take a lot of memory. And also this, of course, this one can support all kinds of different language. But some other one like the Eclipse and Visual Source Code, they are all great IDE. So you can use one environment to develop the code. So you have the source code over there in the IDE, and how can you really build that out of the source code? Is that you have the whole stuff it's installed called the JDK, so Java Development Kit. The JDK means you are really use this as a development environment, and that's a baseline. You can really build all kind of application. Of course, the JDK has much more than what we really use. For example, the JDK typically coming with library, also coming with document. So that's why inside JDK, they have another layer called the JRE. It's called the Java Running Environment. This is pretty much an interpreter or say a loader. So it's really have its core of the Java development kit. So it do not have anything about the document itself. Instead, they have the document generator, and they have a compiler, they have an interpreter. Okay, and inside the JDE, so here you can see this is JDE. JDK, and inside JDK there's JRE. Inside JRE, they have the Java virtual machine. Of course, Java virtual machine is really something used to run the real code. I will give you a little bit more idea about what's really the JVM means, because that's a very important concept. Of course, it comes with some of this library, something like the real-time supporting of the for the compiler, and have other configuration files. Okay, so now you have your own code, and you have the GRE. You can use this tool to say, I want to compile, so that's Java C. Java C means Java compiler. Java P means start run, and Java W means running as a Windows application. Okay, so this is the very first Java program. I will try to copy paste over here, so you do not have to worry too much about. Okay, so this looks super straightforward. Let me try to save it. And okay, I save it into the temp project. Okay. In case you do not really understand what's a file system or something like that, you do not have to worry about it, because this seminar is not really trying to teach you everything about how to coding the Java. Instead, I try to give you the basic idea about how the Java program is, and what's the difference, and how can you learn Java if you do not have much of this background knowledge. Okay, so I can replace this. Oh, no, I'd rather to use a different name. So for example, I give them Java hello code 1, and then I just write this as hello code 1. Okay, so now I can start to execute it. Okay, sorry. Yeah, this code, man. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I have to load that your hello code 1 for you, so you understand what's that. So this programming hello. Okay. Why? Could not find a load main class. That's very interesting. Okay, I will coming back to revisit that. Maybe something wrong over here, but I can try to run it from here. So I can have the Java hello. Oh, okay. It's not really have the main class. That's very interesting. Okay, let me run this first. Just see. Okay, so that's good. So it's still can be runnable. Cool. Okay, so this is the previous one, which I'm sorry. It looks a little bit weird. Oh, I have to stop it. So this is a complex demo which show you how the firework was shoot, and all of this code comes from the simple one, and you have to define a class, and inside the class you have to have the main method. I don't really, again, I'm not really come here to teach you all of this. Instead, I give you the basic idea about how it works. So what's really the assembler and the compiler? So when we are talking about the Java here, you probably see what's a JVM, right? So they really have something fundamentally very important for Java is that they have the assembler and the compiler. So let's say you have stored 1 at location A, and you have stored number 2 at location B, and you want to add location A and location B, and you want to store the final result. So what you do is that you are really go through the assembler and then put them together and then save it. So what that really means is that you direct type your code into PC and then go through the assembler, convert into the corresponding machine code. So if you see this binary code, right? So 101000101010, all of this you cannot understand, but that's really everything what the computer's CPU can understand. It's really try to be understood by after the compiler. So this is really the example about the 1 plus 2. So the assembler will convert this code into the machine code and give it as the output. Okay. So the compiler is really something like this. So the assembler is really something you see at this part, but the compiler it's really how to convert this. Of course, this is not really right, but you should see something like this into the machine understandable code. So that's even before the assembler. So that's called compiler. Compiler is really for this language. So different language have its own compiler. For example, Python have its own compiler and the Java have its own compiler. So how the Java virtual machine works? This is one of the challenge topic. A lot of beginner try to understand. It's not easy to understand, but I try to make it more understandable. So they have, in general, 4 different steps. So the step 1 is that the code display the addition of 2 numbers. For example, you want to display the 1 plus 2, and you say system out print line, and you save this as a Java file. Of course, you have to include something like inside your main method. And then you use the compiler to compile this code. Say, this code will be compiled into something called the byte code. So if you go to here, I say hello. Okay, sorry. Yeah, that's why. Java C, hello. Java. Oh, I know what. Yeah, there's something they cannot understand. That's why. Okay, I try to find some of this easy to understand code. Okay, for example, you have the person. Okay, so let me try to upload the person, and then you can see what's the code. Okay, so this is the person. So this Java file. Of course, you do not really understand this code. That's fine. So this is the Java code, right? And we have write this code, then we can use Java C, say person Java. And then they can compile and get the Java class. So this is really off the compiler. Okay, so this is the tool called the Java compiler. So this is compiled as person.class. This is called the bytecode. The importance of the bytecode is that this bytecode it's really able to be understood on different platforms. So why it can be understood is because we have the Java virtual machine. The Java virtual machine is really installed on different platforms. Platform refers to the Windows or Mac or the Linux, or so a lot of different operating system. You can think about that. It's like different system. So how can they support all of this? So you have the daemon Java compiled as daemon.class, and then on different platforms they have its own JVM, Java virtual machine. They can run it, get the same result. So that's why it's super important. So you do not really direct from here to here. Instead, you have the compiler, which create a class file, which is the bytecode. Okay, so that's Java virtual machine. Java virtual machine is really used to support to run the Java on different platforms. And one thing very tricky for the beginner, especially anybody do not really learning anything about advanced programming language, is OOP. OOP stands for the object-oriented programming. And before OOP, we have something called the procedure programming. Procedure programming is something typically very easy to understand. Let me show you a little bit about how the procedure programming looks like. Okay, recent file. I can show you a Python code. Okay, so this is a Python code, right? How the Python code works is they'll try to understand from the beginning to the end. Say, okay, I have input, ask for your name, and then I print out your name. Welcome to my number game. And then they see, oh, this defined a function here. So they try to understand what's a function, but they will not start running. So they will hold on, say, oh, hold on, let's see. Oh, then they see there's another function called main. Okay, I try to understand what's a main. Now they see the first one, which is not a function, but it's something called a function. So it's really called the main function. So they jump into the core of the main function. Into the main function, they have called the game function. So they jump into the main game function and then start from the beginning to the end. So this is really something we call the procedure programming. So it's really like the step-by-step. It's you can think it like this. It's pretty much like how you cook your dinner, right? So you probably find the food, uh, just something like ingredient and put together on the table and then try to chop it and then put in the fryer pan and then try to cook it. And so that's step by step. That's really how the procedure programming looks like. But on the other hand, the object-oriented programming is different. They are really not really try to say, okay, I do it step by step. Of course, they still do it step by step, but they try to break everything into an object. I will give you a little bit more idea about what the object means, but here you just try to make the separation between this. Procedure programming is try to run it from the beginning to the end, and object-oriented programming not necessary to do that. Okay. So here is some quick comparison of the programming, two different methods, procedure programming and OOP. So if you check this with the function, you can see this is a C code. Okay, I'm sorry, you probably don't really know this C code, but this is C code. So they are running from the beginning to the end. This is really the Java code. Java code on one side is very much similar to C++. So if you happens to know a little bit about C++, you probably find that they looks very similar. Of course, not the same, but they looks very similar. Something fundamentally different is that you can see here, they have the main, and then they have the code line by line. But here, they define it as class. First, it has a class name. Then it has a main method. You can think this main method is pretty much like this main. Then it starts to run it, say, okay, inside the main method, I run it. I create a new object of random. Of course, you do not really understand what random object means. So it's trying to generate a random number. Then they say, okay, this random number will be generated between 1 to 1,000. So that's the number of guess. So that's something like, oh, I set up a number, I ask you to make the guess. And then the number of tries is here. And then you can input from the system. So this is get the input from system called scanner. And of course, you can print it out like this. This is not very complex coding, but something very important is this line. So they'll create an object of the random. Instead of direct use random, generate a random number, you have to create an object before you can really use that to generate a random number. So that's fundamentally different. They are not really able to go through that, say, okay, I just, without creating an object, I direct generate a random number. That's impossible here. Okay, and since some of you probably have a little bit knowledge, even some experience about Python, so I think it makes sense to make some comparison of the Python to Java. Personally, I like this topic because this will give you more details of how to transfer from the Python programmer to a Java programmer. Even you are just really recently learned Python, you probably amazed by how simple and elegant the Python is, right? So the Python is really a very elegant beginner language, also very powerful. But on the other hand, of course, it has its own limitation. I'm here not really try to say Python is less powerful than Java, but in general, they are for different purpose. Sometimes choose Java is better than Python. On the other hand, on some other case, Python is better than Java. So let's try to compare. So basically, from the language standpoint, the Python is an interpret language. Of course, Java is also an interpret language. So the Python is trying to instantly convert the human readable code into machine readable code. This part probably is the same because Java is also trying to do that, and you can understand how it goes through the JVM, right? So Java Virtual Machine. And typing, typing is not really something we type in on the computer. It really means what kind of type they are really trying to bound to. It's a little bit more technical. If you don't really understand, don't worry about that. I just quickly go through it. Python is dynamic type. One thing about dynamic type means you do not really have to really give them a type before you use it. But Java is really a static type. So that means you have to give them a type. I will give you the example slightly late. Okay, syntax. The Python syntax, it's really more flexible. So the most important syntax constraint for Python is the indent. If you ever code Python and you find your code do not work, the number one tips or hint I give to my student is check your indent. A lot of times it's because the indent it's not there. You use a space instead of indent. Okay, but on the other hand, Python have less code restriction, so the syntax is much more flexible. And Java, the little more code, you have to type in all kind of variable and have all kind of syntax rules you have to follow. So performance-wise, compile the code at the runtime is Python, and it's being not really as super performance efficient. Java compile the code in advance, so that means Java is not really compile the code on the fly. So they are not say, okay, I check the code and then I compile the code. Instead, you can see if you run Java, you already have compiled it into the dot class. So that's a byte code. You can direct run this code. For example, let me run it. Say, hi. Sorry. So this is really get a result. You do not really have to compile. On the other hand, if you don't recompile as a class or byte code, you cannot directly run it, right? Like what we are doing here, Java hello. Okay, this you do not recompile, so that's why it's not really work. Okay, but Python, if you happen to know that, let me see if I have another place I can show you how Python code works. Oh, gee. Sorry. Let me see if I have the Python code I can show you. C10. Python. Okay, for example, if I want to show you some simple Python code, Python.py. Okay, I'm sorry. This one is a little bit too challenging, so that's why it didn't work. Okay, demo maybe. Oh, hello. Okay, let me see if I can. Okay, so this is the Python code. You do not really have to create anything like class or bytecode. Instead, they are really trying to read the file. This is file, so it's super straightforward, simple, right? And this file will be read and interpret and running at the same time. So that's something slightly different. But because of this, Java was comparable, has higher performance. It's faster and easy than the Python's dynamic typing. Okay, so let's do a quick vote, or say quiz. How many of you ever learned Python before? You can type in the chat if you don't really feel comfortable to speak out. Okay, let me see the chat. Where's the chat? Okay. Okay, did Minecraft Java? Oh, yes. Never? Okay, I haven't done it. That's fine. Yeah. If you don't really know Python, don't worry. Yeah, this is not a place really try to teach either of this language. Of course, I hope you will find it still useful when you compare side by side. Especially if you heard somebody tell you, oh, you should learn Python, and or some other people tell you, oh, you should learn Java. So you probably have some basic idea about what's the difference between them. So I continue move on. So Python really tests the syntax during the runtime, just like what I show you here, right? And Java has higher stability since everything has been reviewed and established before running the code. So you have any problem, it's already been checked. So that's pretty much like you already checked your backpack before you go to school. So when you go to school, you will not surprised say, oh, I forgot to bring the textbook, or I forgot to bring my homework. So Python, on the other hand, is I don't recheck my backpack. Instead, I go to classroom, then I start to pick up. Then you say, geez, I forgot my homework, right? So you can see what's the difference between them. Java is pretty much like you check your homework before you go to school. And Python is pretty much like you check it at the classroom. Speed. For development, of course, Python has fast development because the simplicity and flexibility. Java project, on the other hand, it takes longer time and it also requires larger development team to build the big project. Okay. Now let's have some quick comparison side by side of the same code, same logic. So simply put here is that Python runs slower but launch faster. So that means Python do not really need to compile the code ahead of time, but it's running slower when it runs. And on the other hand, Java launch slower, but stand out to running fast. So that means when you launch it, it's slow to launch, but it's running faster. And if you compare the Python code to Java code here, so the same logic, you have x, y, was x is 12, y is 10. And then you have is true, you can say true. And you have the greeting, say welcome. So this is the Python code. Everything here can be pretty much runnable if I show you. Sorry, takes me a while. Okay, so I save it as the demo one. Okay. Project. Sorry. Okay, demo one. And if I run, you probably will see nothing because this code do not really print out anything, but I can print something out. Say, okay, I can print XY. Okay, so you can see it's print XY. And on the other hand, the Java code, you need to create the class first. And then inside the class, you have to create your main method. Inside main method, you have to declare the X and Y and pay attention to that. You have to let them know what's the type of that. So this X and Y are all integer, so that's some number. And you have the it's true, it's Boolean. So that's something yes or no, true or false, right? And you have the string like this. If you want to print it out, you have to use something like the system dot out print line, something like this. Okay, X, Y. Sorry. You probably also like to put the space in between. Okay, anyway, this is not a very nice programming coding here, but just an example. Okay, yeah, even this is not looks very nice. Okay, anyway. Okay, so this is a Java code doing the same thing here. I probably add one more line here. So here you can print X and Y. Okay. So this is very straightforward compare, right? So you can see the Java is much simpler, but compared to the, the Python is much simpler, and compared to Java, Java is much more complex here. But I will tell you why you need that. Here is again, if you compile the Python to Java code, the list and array. The list you can think about laundry list or shopping list, right? Oh, this is a country list. You probably watch the Olympic game now, so you know some of these countries are really joining different competition. Let's say this is a soccer competition. You have Portugal and England, Brazil, New Zealand, Spain. So this is a whole list of the country, and this is a list of number, and you can really sort it by call this. This is a Python code, and then you can loop it, print out the country name one by one. But compared to what it has to be done in the Java, you can see here. Of course, this part looks similar, but something fundamentally different is that you have to give them the type. So this is a string, and then this is another type you have to give to them. Sorry. This is integer. So there are two different lists, and then you can sort it. Of course, the Java also have the sort method here, and then you can loop through and print out. So their code looks similar, but not same. Again, Python is slightly more flexible. You do not have to tell them this is a string. You do not have to tell them this is integer. And over here, it's also slightly simple. Okay. But Java, you can see, you have to define the class first. So this is main class. You have to define the method first. So this is main method. Then you can start to write your code inside the main method. Okay, I think I missed one. Yes, I think I missed one here. Okay, so now let's move on to the next example. Even Python is not really as syntax constrained as Java. It can also support the OOP. So that means it can support the object-oriented programming. When we're talking about the object-oriented programming, we are mostly talk about the class. Of course, you probably don't really know what's a class. You can thinking about it's like a blueprint. For example, you have the you check your street. Most likely on your street, you probably see 2 or 3 different house. They looks very much like each other. Like my house, really pretty much the same model like the house next to me. So do you know why that was happen? It's because when the design the before the even build the house, when the design, the architecture, they will try to say, oh, how can we build this house? Of course, we have to create some sort of blueprint first. So this blueprint was really used as a template before they even build each house, right? The same thing is for the car. If you have a car like Toyota, or you have a car like Ford, you have a car like Mazda, or you have a car like Tesla, do you see this car looks, I mean, the same model of the car looks exactly the same. How can they build it? They build it from the same blueprint. So that means they use the same template. Even you have your own car, as long as it's, for example, I have a Tesla Model 3. That's exactly the same as my friend's Tesla Model 3. The looks exactly the same. The only difference is that, oh, maybe exterior color is different. Maybe they have a slightly different configuration, but most of them are the same. So the class, it's really like the blueprint. Okay, I hope you can understand that. So you can use the same blueprint to construct multiple different, multiple house. They looks similar. So here you have the person. The person have the name, nationality, age, right? So you can initial the person. The initial means you can give them the name, give them nationality, give them the age here. And then you can check if it's a minor. So you check its age. If large or equal to 18, say, oh no, that's not a minor anymore. Otherwise, it's a minor. So for minor, you have some restriction. For example, you cannot buy by liquid by yourself. So that makes sense to check the age. If you create the similar logic in Java, you will do something looks very similar. Of course, it was declared as public. Again, I don't really come here to teach you Java. Instead, I give you the basic idea, and you can compare side by side with Python. And you have the name for this class. So that's you have the nationality. Of course, you can make it short as nation and age. And when you create a person, you give them the name, nation, and the age. For this class, you also have its own method called its minor. So if you check its age, you can get true or false, and you know whether it's a minor or it's not. So again, this looks pretty much similar, right? But they are fundamentally different because here you can see the do not really, if you compare this initial to this, it's pretty much the same, but they do not really need to declare this before they use it in the initial. So that's slightly different, right? Okay, so another one is that now we have the class. We want to create the object. Create object is pretty much like, you have class. Class is like the blueprint. Now you are really build the house. Now it's the time to build the house. So you use this blueprint and you can build your own house, right? And in Python, you can see it's pretty straightforward. John Doe, it's a name, country. Probably you find the country from the country list, and the age is 19, something like that. Then you can print whether it's a minor. Okay, so the P1, P1 it's really called an object. So that's this person. This person has a name, has a nationality, has an age. And now inside the Java, of course, this is a simplified version. Again, you still have to have the class, have the main method and everything. So if I copy this over, okay, maybe that's not right. Okay, you should put that inside here. You have a main. So here you need to work inside the main. Let me try to make it clear. Okay. So for example, you have the main and you have to create an object. Okay. So now this is an object, and then you can print whether it's a minor or not. Okay, so now you have this. So this is main method, and inside this main method, you create a person object, and then you check whether it's a minor or not. Okay, one quick quiz. So if you call this P1 is minor, will it get you a true or false? Try to use the logic here. So this is a person, right? The person's name is John Doe, and country is some sort of country from this list, and the age is 19. And then you print out John Doe, whether John Doe is minor or not. So can you tell me whether this is yes or no, or true or false? If you think about that, this is really where we declare our method. So if its age is larger than or equal to 18, it will be false. Otherwise, it's true. So now your age here, your age is 19. So of course, it's large or equal than 18. So it will return false here. So that's how it gets the return false here. Okay, so that's some basic logic. Yeah, if you don't really get all of this, don't worry about it. Again, I'm not really here to teach you how to code in Java. In one presentation, it cannot be done, but I hope you can understand what's the difference between Python and Java, and also when you are learning, you don't get confused. Okay, something for beginner to learn different languages, that different language have its own syntax or say naming rule. And Java is the same thing. So for example, you create a variable. You cannot really start with, oh, I'm sorry, this is Python. So this is Java. Okay, so let me run this Java for you. So this gets name and age, right? And you cannot really start that with everything. Instead, you must start with letter. So for example, you have the age, you have the first name, last name, and you can use underscore. The variable must contain the letter, digit, or underscore. It's case sensitive. So for example, you have the age here. If you create another one called age, 35, 45, it's perfectly fine because these two are not the same. So this age and this age are not the same because this A is capital case and this is not. So for example, we're running here. See, it's still working. So doesn't really matter. But if you have both of lowercase, that will cause a little bit trouble because the second one will really become the obsolete. Okay, let's see. Age still 25. Oh, you know what? Because I don't recompile it. Okay, so let me show you quickly. So I need to compile, and so this compile success. I can still run, right? But if I use this, I compile again. Now you can see this error here. Say, oh, it's already defined. So that means this age was defined. So you cannot use the same variable to define again. So that's what we mean here. It's case sensitive. It can be any length. Of course, I don't really show you why it can be any length because that's something. But you can use underscore here. So if you want to declare the age like this, that's a different age. So you can see this and this are different. I'm sorry, this is slightly small. Let me make it bigger. View. Okay, Control plus plus. Okay. Yeah, I hope. Okay. Yeah, this is slightly bigger. You can see it slightly better, I believe. Okay, so you can see this and this are different because they have the underscore here. So when you compile, it works fine. Yeah, and when you execute it, still age is still 29. Okay. So the keyword in Java, that's really something when we're talking about keyword, that means when we are code, we have something like the public, we have the static, we have void, we have class. All of these are called keyword. Keyword means it was reserved for the programming language itself. You cannot really use this keyword for the variable. So for example, you cannot really say integer static equal to 30. So if you're doing something like this, you can save and compile. They will tell you, say, oh, that's illegal start of type. So that means this static, you can use static as a keyword. Again, I don't really teach you why it's static, but you just understand this public class, static, void, these are really reserved for the program language itself. You cannot really use this to create a variable. So you cannot use this to say for other purpose. So I have to comment out. So this should work. So I can compile. Now it compares successfully, right? Okay. So you have see a lot of keyword. You do not have to remember all of this. Again, when you are learning, you probably will go through a lot of this keyword, and you find it's pretty easy to understand why you need to reserve this. Because, for example, this refer to the object itself, and package refer to the whole package of different libraries packed together. Except, that means the exception, and throw exception, something like that. Okay, let's move on. So they have some basic types of the variable. In general, we have three different kind of variable. We have something called the local variable. We have something called the instant variable. We have something called static variable. And I try to give you some example which is easy to understand. The local variable is really declared inside the body of a method. So for example, you have the method, it's a main method here. You can declare the variable inside this, and this is only viewable by its own method. Again, if you get confused, don't worry about that. You do not really have to fully understand that. It's not really say you have to remember everything, right? And instance variable, it's really defined without the static keyword. So most of this, for example, here, they are all called the variable, but they are not, they are just instance variable. Compared to the static variable, for example, we can try to create a static variable here. This is perfect fine. So this is like, okay, length, for example. So the length is 150, 140. Okay. So if I have the static variable here, that means it's really initialized only one time, and when you run it, you cannot change it. For example, you have this, and then you can print out here static variable, and then names. Okay, so let's compare it and run. So you can see 140, right? The static variable here is 140. But if you try to change it, you will see what's going on here. Static length, length 10. This is also work. So that becomes 150 because you have the 140, and then 140 plus 10 becomes 150. But if you want to do something like this, you want to say, okay, I just want to change it by myself, 180. That's really something has been changed to stick with the same variable. And it was really something will be initialized once. So the difference is that you do not really have to put it inside one of the method and then to start it. Instead of, you can really start it from here. Okay, so that's something you can show the difference between the instance and the static variable. And what's the basic data type? The basic data type, they have two different categories. One is called the primitive data type. Another one is called non-primitive data type. A primitive data type is something means you are really have this data type was bound with the Java language itself. So when they create that language, they have its own syntax like the Boolean, char, byte, short, integer, long, and float, double. All of this really has been built in, so you do not have to worry about anything like that. But the non-primitive is something which you can really expand by yourself. For example, you have the string, you have the array. Again, you do not have to worry too much about that if you don't understand it. So the basic data type, which is primitive data type, has something called the byte, short, integer, and long. If we understand what's a binary code, so we have something called the 1 and 0, right? So a 1 or 0 is called 1 byte. And so you have something like this, like 1 or 0. So that's 1 byte. And 2 byte means, for example, you have 1 0. So that's 2 byte. And 4 byte, of course, is 1 0 1 0. That's 4 byte, right? So 8 byte, it's again, it's more than that. 1 0 1 0 0 0 1 1, something like this. I just give you some typical example here, so you do not have to be confused. What's this really refer to? Okay. Again, I just remove this so you don't really get confused. In case you don't really learn binary before, binary is really something fundamentally supported by the computer. So all of this CPU, they are not really able to understand anything other than the binary. So you have to compile and convert that into the 1001000001, something like that. So that's fundamentally what the computer CPU can understand. And again, you can see here, any type has longer byte. For example, the long has 8 byte. That means they can hold more information, right? So this can write a bigger number, and this can only write a short number. So to here, double can write a much bigger number than the Boolean. Of course, the Boolean only read 1 bit because it's either 1 or 0. So it doesn't really matter, right? Okay, so now let's go into a little bit of the core, because the Java programming language is really comes with a lot of built-in package. Something like the lang, L-A-N-G, just short for the language, and something like the utility, right? UTIL, it's really the utility class. This is really something like built into the Java's core. So that means whenever you install Java, you do not really have to say, okay, I installed a separate package. It's already been installed for you. So when you are really import this package, you can just say import java.lang.math.start. This means all of this method defined inside this package, you can use it. I can give you a little bit example. Just give me 1 minute. Okay, so this is math demo. Let me see if I have the math demo here. Okay, so yeah, I have the math demo here. Okay, so this is math demo code. Again, you can see this code is here. They are import the Java. I'm sorry. Control plus plus. Okay. Control plus plus. Let me see. I have to make it bigger so you can see it clear. Otherwise, sorry. Okay. So you can see this code. The first line is import the package. The whole idea about that is that they try to use the method declared inside the math package. So you have integer, you have a double, and then you can have all kind of method. Say, okay, you have the maximum between A and B. So say who is bigger, right? And you have the square A, and you have power B by 2. You have the run B. Let's compile, and then we can run. Okay, so you can see here the result. I'm sorry. Again, this looks slightly small, but hopefully you can see it. So from here, you can see the maximum number of A and B is A. I don't really tell you why they show you 9.0 instead of 9, because when they try to compare, they always try to use whoever have the longer length by the data type. So the double have the 8. This is 4, so they use a double. And the square of a. So a is 9, and its square root is 3. And then power of a by 2 is b, I'm sorry, this b. This power by 2 gets this number. And then the print round of the b is 6. So this was round up, so this 6. Okay, so you can see all of these are really coming from this math package. So that's very straightforward, and also it's very easy to use. But without this, it cannot work. For example, I remove this. Sorry, I try to compile it. Okay, I know what, because this was compiled before, so that's why. If I give them a different name and then rerun and recompile, they will give you the error message. So that's something you must import this, otherwise you cannot use the math. And here again, they give you different data type and give you different data types, its size. I probably should move this slide up. And they have the different group of operator. The operator means just like you use minus, plus, time, multiple by, and divide by. That's all called operator. But far beyond that, you have something really just for different purpose. Like you have logic, you have and or, right? You have the assignment, you have something like the relationship, right? It's all about different operator. Again, I'm not really here to teach you all of this, but let me show you some quick example. Number demo. Okay. So this is a number demo. Okay, hopefully this is big enough. You can see it. Okay, it's much better. So here you have A is a number, B is another number. So you can have the all kind of operation, right? So you have plus, minus, multiple by, divide by, and mode, and large than, equal to, large than, and equal to, compare, or under. Again, I'm not really here to teach you all of this, but I just give you some quick examples so you can see it. So here is the result. So you can see plus, of course, 29, and minus 13, something like that, again and again. Something a little bit hard to understand is this and this. I'm not really here to teach you all of these details. You just need to know that it's powerful enough to give you all kind of combination. So it was supported by Java language. Okay, and now let's see, what's the Online IDE? So whenever we're learning some of this advanced programming language, like Python or Java or JavaScript, we probably 80% of the time we have to rely on the IDE. But for the IDE, we also have something called the Online IDE. Online IDE is really web-based integrate development platform. So that means you can really put that over here. I know some of these are really very powerful, like the Trinket. It supports the Python language, but recently I believe they also support the Java language. Yes, they support Java language again. So if I have my own account, you can use this as a Online IDE. So this is pretty much a web-based IDE which you can code, and you can save your code. But just give you a little bit hint, do not really try to rely on this for very complex project. It's because a lot of times the online IDE do not really give you the ability to import all kind of package. If you see this, sorry. Just here, you have to import this math. But sometimes you have to import far more than that. For example, you want to import a library which was built by your library. So you have to say something like, oh, I have to import this, the import conf, like the IC dot library, something like this. If you want to import something like this, you cannot really ask them to import this for you because they don't really want to import this library. Sometimes it's because of system performance, sometimes it's for security reason, but on your local, you can always import that because that's your own machine. So that's fundamentally different. You do not really always get that kind of flexibility online. But if you just try to run some very simple and straightforward program, for example, you want to run this, yeah, you have to rename it. You can run it. It has no problem. It's quick and easy, right? So you can see they get the same result as what we get from here if we run here. See, they are the same result, right? It's exactly the same. So, but they have its own limitation. I just give you some quick example. Okay, so you have something like the IDE one. Again, I don't really use IDE one very often, but that's something you can use. It can be used to create the code over here. I can put my code over here, and okay. Yeah, I can run. So they'll try to compile it, and then try to give you a result. Looks like they are quite slow today, but anyway, yeah, they give you a result. Okay, so these are really the same like the Trinket. It's just online based IDE. Here I give you a little bit of the tips how to compare between chart and string. If you don't really know much about the chart, you probably know something about string. String means you can put a lot of characters together, right? And the char here, you can only put one. So they are really different. In Java programming language, if you are char, you only use a single code. But for string, you use a double code. And the string in Java is really an object. So it has its own methods. For example, you have string declared as age. Even this looks like one chart, but you can convert it use to uppercase. So this is uppercase is age, and you can get its length is 1, and you can get its chart at 0. So they have the position 0, 1, 2, 3 is age. But the chart is a primitive, so you cannot call method direct on. For example, you have the char age, you try to convert it to be uppercase. No, it didn't work because they do not really have this method. This is not an object. Instead of this is really a variable by itself. So do here. You cannot say, oh, I want to get this char at 0 position and then try to convert. It didn't work. Okay. And we can also try this, but it's a little bit more advanced. So I don't really want to confuse you. That makes no sense. Okay, so you can skip this if you want, but I just quickly go over this. The Boolean, you can check the chart whether it's really a letter or digit or white space or it's uppercase, lowercase. It's very useful, especially if you want to handle all of this case. And for on the other hand, string is much, much more powerful. That's why in Java programming, most times we do not use char. unless we have to. Use string for majority of the time, you can really do the job. So you have all kind of method you can support. You convert uppercase, lowercase, you can really compare to another string, you can replace, you can index, you can get its length, all kind of stuff, you get it. Okay, so now let's have a quick example of the string. So let's see the string demo here. Okay, here. Yeah, I'm sorry. This is really a little bit small, so I have to make it bigger. Hopefully you can see it clearly. Okay. Okay. So this is really one string, right? Hello, how are you doing? Then it can check its length. They can get its chart at position 8, and then it can concat with this. So that means this string plus this string, and it can check whether it has start with this. How are you? And it has its substring, it can get it. It can find its match. If you have the U, it can split that at ninth position, it can replace. Of course, all of this, you do not really have to worry about it. I give you a quick example. You just get its basic result. So the first one is that its length. Its length, the length of this string is 23. And the chart at 8 positions. So that means from here, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. So that's a W. Okay. And then they try to combine the first string with the second string, best wish. So, hello, how are you doing? Best wish. That looks cool, right? And then we check whether this string will start with how are you. Of course, this start with hello. So that means they will get you a false. And then they get its substring from 12. So that means all the way move to 12th position. Then from here, they will get the rest of the string. That's called substring. That you have a big string, the whole string, you chop it and get its substring. And have the match. Do you have the U over here? Okay, I think they have the U's matches. And they have the split. Of course, the split will get a whole array list, so you don't really see it here. And they have the replacement of all of the O to Q. So you will see this looks very weird because hello, the O become Q, the hello H become Q, so the O become Q, so HQW instead of HOW, right? So that's really something the string can give to you, but the chart cannot. We discussed a little bit about the array, and we have very limited time, so we have to move a little bit fast. Hopefully we can finish it. The array, it's really something very common. So when all of this element is the same, you can put them in a whole list that becomes an array. So once you define the type, the size of the array is fixed, and you cannot increase to accommodate more element. The first element of an array starts with index 0. So these are something key. So for example, you have the array X, and at its 0 position, it's 0, 1 is 1, so on and so forth. So that's build an array. Again, I like to show you the demo instead of just tell you what's that. Okay, so the array demo 1, let's move over here. Okay. Yeah, unfortunately, it's quite small, so I try to give you the bigger. Okay. So this is among array demo 1. So you have the array A at 0 position is change, and then you have the B is apple, mango, and orange. You print out the B, and then you can change its element B. So that means you send the B over here, make its 0 position becomes changed. So we will see what it looks like. Okay, so you can see here, the first time it prints the array at 0 position is apple, because this is how the array was created, right? Apple, mango, and orange. And then when you call this change element, this apple was replaced by this change, so that when you get the element at 0 again, it was changed. So that's pretty straightforward. Of course, if you get confused or get lost, don't worry. This is just something give you the quick taste. Okay. And the multidimensional array, just like one-dimensional array, you can also create multi-dimensional array. So here you have the 3 by 5. So you have 3 row, 5 column, and totally with 3 times 5 is 15 element. All right, so you can do it. It's absolutely possible, and it's very, very powerful. If anybody know about the TensorFlow, you probably see something like this before, right? They try to make the multi-dimension calculation based on that. If you want to create an array of objects, it's also possible. Again, this is a little bit more advanced. I do not want to confuse it here, but you just try to understand that if you have a whole list, as long as each one of them are the same data type, you can put them together. For example, you have a whole list of people, so you can create an array of people. The first people probably is Luke. Let's try to see how many people we are here. The second one is David. The third one is Ryan, and Dario, and Cohen, and Lime. And so each one have the same, just like the person as an object. So you can put them together as a list. Oh, here is an array. Okay, so now let's move on. We have last and final minute. Yeah, I tried to give you this example, but let me see if I have time. Okay, object array. Okay, object array. So you can see here. So if you have account, right, and account you have set a data, and in each account you have two number. One is A, another is B, and you have the value of the A and B if you print it out. So this, oh, I'm sorry. I think this is something I don't really finish. Okay, so basic idea is that you can give the, oh yeah, that's something I want to show you the error message. They try to put the different object inside the same array. So you can create different account and then add into the array. Okay, so do the Boolean. If you want to use Boolean, you can use the Boolean, define it as it's raining day or the sunny day. So, and also if else, that's pretty straightforward. It's the same as the Python language. You have the large than, you have the less than, large than, greater than, equal to, something like that. And if you want to use something a little bit more tricky, they have something called the ternary operator. So that means you have the one condition and you get the true, you go to the first part. You get the false, you go to the second part. For example, you have the time is 20 and time is smaller than 18. Of course not. So that's false. So when you print out, you will go to good evening. So that's really something which try to give you very easy and elegant for the coding part. You do not really have to write a lot of code, say, okay, if this smaller than 18, say print out good day, then print out good evening. So you do not have to do that. This is something like the shorthand but it's very, very powerful. If you're learning something like more advanced, you can definitely use this. Okay, and as a summary, Java programming language is super powerful, and if you do not really ever learn it, you are definitely can learn it. You do not really have to learn Python before Java, but just remember that since the OOP, the object-oriented language, it's really the built-in for Java. So you cannot really write something like this or like this. You have to create your own class first. Without doing anything, you have to create the class. So that sometimes confuse you, but on the other hand, it's very like the syntax constraint. So you will definitely have to follow this constraint, follow this rule. And the third one is that it's not as flexible as Python, but it's also very powerful. Okay, I have some quick example. If I have time, I try to show you, but unfortunately, I'm running out of time. So hopefully in the future, if I have chance, I can show you. Okay, see if I can show you this. Okay, so this is a quick example of the, okay, I can, this is the tic-tac-toe program. It's a game, so I play with the computer, and of course I will lose because they are ahead of me. So this was written by Java. Again, I don't really show you how all of this code looks like, but you get the basic idea. Okay, this is the code. It's not really super lengthy, but it's complex enough for the beginner. Again, I hope you can enjoy today's presentation. And if you want to ask me some question, please contact Leventon Public Library. I have another and final presentation next Friday, I believe. It's about the 3D modeling. So if you have chance or have interesting, you're welcome to join us, and I will give you idea about how the 3D modeling is and how can we start to do the 3D modeling. And again, have a very nice summer time. And if you enjoy Olympic game, just like what I enjoyed, watch TV and follow it, chase for these guys who play really good and just find the excitement. And yeah, you have a great weekend. Bye.